Hi, this is G. Michael Vasey with another episode of My Haunted Life 2 podcast. I read stories, your stories and my stories, of encounters with the paranormal and supernatural and the downright strange that have been submitted to my website, myhauntedlife2.com. Sometimes I also read stories from my books. Tonight I'm going to read you 3 stories submitted by people just like you who had strange and scary experiences. Please do follow, share and like this podcast. Let's begin. Am I haunted? My story begins when I was 8 years old and my mother was cleaning the back half of the house. As she was coming to the front, I heard her tell my brother to shut the door if he was going to use the restroom, and then she walked on like nothing had happened. She reached the front room and stopped dead in her tracks and said to my brother, who was there with me, "How did you get here so fast?" I asked, "Who are you talking to, Mum?" And she said, "I was talking to your brother." I now think that my mother saw my brother's doppelganger. When I was 12, we moved to a new house. The first night there, we had to call the police department because we could hear something walking in the attic. The attic opens up in my closet. The police came out and went up into the attic, but nothing was there, not even an animal. Now the house was built for us, so it was young, and it had no exterior holes for an animal to enter or escape. Another time, my brother and mother were at home watching a movie while I was out with friends. I was 16 at the time, and we had one of them old school big screen projection TVs. My brother noticed someone sitting in the hallway, a dark figure. My mother saw it also and realizes that my brother had seen it. When they looked down the hallway, though, nothing was there. Another time, I had a date at the house, and we were sitting on the couch watching a movie. I started to feel odd, and she was a bit uneasy as well. After roughly an hour, my remote fell off the couch by itself. Actually, it fell off strangely, almost flying off the couch and landing in the centre of the living room. She got really uneasy then, asking me to walk her home. Around this time, I would wake up in the middle of the night, hearing what sounded like someone pacing in the hallway. You could hear the swooshing noise pants make when rubbing together, but no one would be there. However, the second that you laid down again, the noise would start back up. I had several friends who hated sleeping over. They felt uneasy and were all scared of my closet. Towards the end of living in that house, you would hear noises like someone hitting the wall, but as if they were actually in the walls or outside of the walls. Water turned on in the bathroom that we never used and was locked up. You would come home to pans all over the floor as if someone had thrown them out of the cabinets. We decided to move and went many years without further incident. I have been living in my current home for 3 years now, and my backyard scares me as it's very dark. Almost darker than it should be. At night, I can hear someone in the attic walking around, and it's a loud walk, almost like walking in a heavy boot. Sitting in the living room, I can see things moving in front of the window to the backyard out of the corner of my eye, but never actually see anything head on. One night, I heard someone walking around my yard and asking me if I would help them. I went outside to see who it was, but nobody was there. Another night, I thought I saw someone standing in the living room. I had this horrid feeling of dread that almost makes you feel sick to your stomach, and it took me 30 minutes to get up enough courage to get out of the bed to make sure no one was in my home. Nobody was there, of course. Finally, my animals react to the noises as well. They run and hide when they hear the walking, and they won't sit in the back window during the night. I feel as if I'm haunted, and I have no clue if that's even possible. But I've had these things happen to me since the day when I was 8 years old with my brother. Submitted by Jeffrey. Who was it called me? My mother and I were home alone one day and in different rooms of the house. She was in her bedroom in the attic, and I was on the second floor in my room. All of a sudden, my cell phone started to ring, and it said, "Mom." I picked it up and said, "Hey, what's up? Do you need something?" I waited for a response, but there was nothing but dead air for a while. A few seconds went by, and then I heard a very eerie whisper, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. So I said, "What? Mum, are you okay?" Again, there was no response until a few seconds later. I heard a woman whisper, "The attic," in a really creepy voice. Then there was static and the phone hung up. It gave me the chills. I then went upstairs to check on Mum. When I got to the top of the stairs, I looked to my right and saw that my mother was on her bed, sweating like crazy and gasping for air. She couldn't breathe. She has asthma, and she was having an asthma attack at that very moment. I looked through her drawers to find her pump, and when I found it, I gave it to her. After a few minutes, she was able to breathe normally again, and I asked her if she'd called me before I came upstairs. She said no, and gave me a weird look and said, "How could I have called you if I couldn't breathe? And besides, my cell phone battery is dead, so it's been off for hours." Once again, I got the chills. Who could that have been on the phone telling me to go to the attic? And how could they have known my mother was having an asthma attack at that moment? That same day when I told her about the phone call, she was pretty scared and told me to help her move her furniture and other things to the empty bedroom on the second floor. Submitted by Steph R. Arguing voices from upstairs concern a small girl. When I was young, I lived at my aunt's house. It was huge but was completely occupied as most of my relatives lived there. However, during the day, the house would be almost empty except for my older aunt and the housemaid, as most of the people living there went to work. One day I was sent home early from school because I was sick. Upon arriving home, the housemaid prepared me some chicken soup and told me to eat it at the dining area. She left me there alone and I started to eat the soup. After a few minutes, I heard some voices coming from the second floor. At first, I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it sounded as if they were arguing. Straining to understand their conversation, I realized that it was my aunt and uncle's voices arguing over selling the old Jeep that my uncle was driving. Their voices were more audible now, and in fact I thought that they were about to physically fight. I stopped eating and went and stood at the bottom of the stairway to listen more. That's when the housemaid saw me and asked me, what was I doing there? I told her aunt and uncle were fighting. She looked at me as if I'd said something terrible and told me to take my medicine. At that time the voices had stopped, and so I started to go up to the second floor to check out my aunt and uncle. The housemaid stopped me though, so I cried and said that something terrible might have happened upstairs because it had all gone silent after the argument that I heard. The housemaid told me to calm down, because we were the only ones home at the time. Submitted by Janetsky. Do you have a story of a strange encounter? Have you seen a ghost? Have you had an encounter with a shadow person? If you have, why not pop over to myhauntedlife2.com and tell us it. Yes, and who knows, I may end up reading it on another episode of the My Haunted Life 2 podcast series. Please do like and share this podcast. Please do come over to www.myhauntedlife2.com and visit with us thousands of stories about true supernatural encounters from people just like you. This is G. Michael Vasey. Have a haunted evening.